श्लाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। आनन्दलीलमाय विग्रहाय हेमपतिभ्यश्चाभिसुन्दराय तस्मै महाप्रेमरसप्रदाय चैतन्यचन्द्राय नमो नमस्ते। चैतन्यचन्द्राय नमो नमस्ते। चैतन्यचन्द्राय नमो नमस्ते। श्याम सुंदर सिकंद सुख स्महा सुमुरली मनोहरा राधिकर सुकमम कृपनिधे सुप्रिय चरण किं करिं तवैवस्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय देवी तं नमामि चरणान्तिकम्। First of all, I offer my Sastang Dandavat Puspanjali, my heart like flowers thousands of times, to the lotus feet of my holy master, the supremely worshipable spiritual Gurudev. Asmadhya Paramaradatam Guru Pada Padma, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad, Ashtotara Satasismad Rupanugachari Varya, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Secondly, I offer my Sastang Dandavat Puspanjali at the lotus feet of my Param Gurudev, to Srila Prabhupada, and to all of our Sri Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru Parampara. And finally, I offer my pranam to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hari Bol. So today's subject is Jiva-Tattva. Jiva-Tattva. That is the principle of the living entity. This is relevant because we are all Jivas. So it's the tattva of our own existence. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was instructing Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami had asked, Kayami, who am I? In reply, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishner Nitya Das Krishnera Tatastha Shakti Ved Abhed Prakash. That every living entity, by their constitutional nature, is a servant of Krishna. Krishna Tatastha Shakti Veda Ved Prakash. They are a manifestation of one of the energies of Krishna called Tatastha Shakti. So the Praman for this we find in the Vishnu Purana. There it is said, Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Chaitra Gyakya Tata Para Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tritiya Shakti Isyate. That the functions of the potency of the Supreme Lord are manifest primarily in three ways. So Vishnu Shakti Paraprakta, the Shakti of the Supreme Lord is manifest in three ways. That is, first, Parashakti, that is his transcendental potency, by which his associates and the spiritual world, they are manifest from the internal potency. Then there is the external potency, avidya karma sanganya, that is the mature energy that causes the living entity to be in avidya, ignorance, and engage them in karma, fruitive activity, doing things to seek a reward for the ahankar, the ego, which is not you, is a symptom of ignorance. So we should never perform any activity to acquire something for ourself, that self in quotation marks, because that self is not really the self even. But everything should be done without any expectation of any return whatsoever, solely, exclusively for the happiness of Shri Krishna. But when one is covered by this external potency, then we accept the upadhi, the designation of an identity which is not our own. Upadhi is just like if there's a clear crystal and you hold a red rose next to it. Then when you look at the crystal, you'll see the colors, the reddish color seems to be present in the crystal. But that reddish color doesn't belong to the crystal at all. It belongs to something completely external. So that reddish color in the crystal is called upadhi. It is not part of its swarup. So the living entity has the upadhi, the designation of a worldly ego and mind, and he identifies through the mind with the body. And then, thinking that his self-interest is acquiring things to satisfy the ego, he engages in karma. So all this is just completely useless, a waste of time. So that is the function of the external potency. Avidya karma sanganya titi shakti vishyate. So we have mentioned the Krishna's spiritual internal potency, Krishna's external material potency, and then there is tatastha shakti, the marginal potency. So in this verse of Vishnu Purana, that marginal potency is said to comprise the Kshetragya. Kshetra means the field, and Gya means the knower. In other words, for each soul we have a body, and this body is the field which is known, which is witnessed by the soul. So the soul is Kshetragya, he is the witness of the field of his own body. Whereas Paramatma is also Kshetragya, but he is the witness of everybody's body. He is within everyone. But we are the Kshetragya, the witness only of our own bodily experience or of our own bodily activities. So never consider that the Atma and Paramatma are one. This is a very common mistake everywhere, especially in the different types of New Age philosophy, which have taken some inspiration from usually Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta in India. So Atma is Kshetragya, the knower of his own field, but Paramatma is the knower of all fields. So this Tatastha Shakti, from the Lord's Tatastha Shakti, unlimited individual living entities have emanated. And these entities, they are Anu. Anu means atomic. Very, very tiny. So Mahaprabhu said to Srila Rupa Goswami Keshagya Kesh Agra Shatabhagasya. This means that if you take the tip of a hair, which is so tiny you can practically not imagine how small it is, just the tip of the hair, and you divide it into 100 parts, throw away 99 parts, keep one, then chop that also into 100 parts, throw away 99 parts again, then what's left is the Atma. But this also is like a poetic expression just to give an impression of how shukshma. The soul is shukshma, extremely fine. So it cannot be, it has no parts. The word anu in Sanskrit is a specific, atomic is a specific philosophical term, and it means partless actually. Tiny and partless. It's not, we use the word atom in English and we talk about splitting the atom and the components of the atom. But in Sanskrit, when you say the word anu, it means no components. It is indivisible. Now, many philosophers think that the Atma is all-pervading. Many philosophers think the Atma is all-pervading. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he began to teach Rupa Goswami about the self, he quoted a verse spoken by the Vedas personified. That is called, in chapter 87 of the 10th canto, there's a very famous chapter called Shruti Stuti. Shruti Stuti. The prayers of the Shrutis, the Vedas personified. And in those prayers, you can find the very precise explanation of all the theories of the Upanishads and Vedanta. So there, Mahaprabhu quoted one verse, Aparimita dhruvas tanuprito yadi sarvagatas. It means if the Atmas, if the souls were all pervading, then they would not be under the control of God. They would not come under the control of God, they could not come under the control of Maya if they were everywhere, because it would mean they were completely unlimited. So unlimited things can't be controlled. They are aparamita, means they are countless. There are countless individual souls, but they are not all pervading. So, for you, it may seem very obvious. Because you have come to Krishna consciousness and from the beginning you were told the soul is minute, situated in the region of the heart. There's not one soul, it's not that we're all the same soul. We're all individuals and so on. So this may be very obvious to you because you came to Krishna consciousness and you heard these basic ideas of Jiva-Tattva. But in the history of philosophy, actually this is not an obvious thing. Even philosophers in the West have posited that sometimes they have said that the living being is a body and a soul. Some Christians believe that when you die, then at the time of the resurrection, everyone is resurrected, then you become resurrected in your body, in the body that you have. Because this is your identity. People think that they will go to heaven and all their family members will be there. Their mother, because they'll be young, right? But their mother and father will be middle-aged. And the grandparents will be eternally like just about to die. And the great-grandparents, no one can say what they'll be like. So people have this idea that when they come into the presence of God, they're going to be this identity. And their relatives will be there in that identity. Because that would be really weird if you go to heaven, you meet your great-grandmother and she's like a teenage girl, right? She's the same age as you or something. So many philosophies are not very well thought out. But there are some philosophers, they have given very strong, apparently strong arguments for their idea of what the self really is, which are very different to our Gaudiya Siddhanta. So what we want to do is look at the ideas of the various classical philosophies of India, and then by comparison we'll have a more clear view of what is our conclusion, the Gaudiya Vaishnava conclusion. So the main philosophies which are discussed in Vedanta, some are Nastic and some are Astic. Nastic means those philosophers who don't accept the Vedas. And Astic means those philosophers who do accept the Vedas. So among the Nastic philosophers, you have Charvak Darshan, Buddhism and Jainism. These are discussed in Vedanta Sutra. And then among those who at least nominally accept the Vedas, you have the Nyaya, the logic darshan of Gautam Rishi, then Vaisheshik, that means the Vedic atomic theory of Kanad Rishi. Then you have Sankhya, the philosophy of Purusha and Prakriti, matter and spirit, of the Kapil Rishi. Then you have the Yoga Darshan, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Then you have Mimamsa. The original sage is Jaimini Rishi, but his ideas are developed and made very famous by Kumaril Bhatta and Prabhakar. And then last you have Vedanta. So Vedanta is of Vyasadeva, but most people in India, they see that Vedanta, though it was written by Vyasadeva, but its true meaning is Advaita Vedanta, that everything is one. And that was propagated predominantly by Shankaracharya and his followers in the 8th and 9th century, 780 AD to 820. So, we'll look at each of the philosophies and then come to our Gaudiya conclusion. So first of all, Charvak, we discussed his philosophy a few days ago. So his philosophy is called Lokayat. Lokayat. So Loka means the world. So like Lokayat is actually the Sanskrit word for materialism. The world of the senses. So for Charvak, the Atma, the self, is this physical body. And even he gives some praman from the Shastra. Because in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, there it is said, there's a very famous verse of the Shruti, Atmanastu kamaya pati priyo bhavati. It means the husband is not dear to you for the sake of the husband, but he is dear for the sake of the Atma. So what does that mean? So the real conclusion is that if you have some affection, some attachment for someone in this world, like in this case, this is actually the words of Yajnavalkya Rishi, and he's instructing his wife, Maitreyi. He's saying that the husband is not an object of your love because of the husband, but because of the Atma. That means that actually you know the body, you have not seen his soul, but you're attached to him because of your body. You have a female body, and that bodily relationship was made at the time of the wedding. At the time of the wedding, then the wife said, Swaha, Swaha. Okay. And she offered herself to the husband.
We can plug it in. Shall we plug it in?
No. Can you all hear? Yes. So, due to the relationship with the body, then the husband is dear. But your body is dear to you. Why? Because Atma is inside. And yourself is dear to you because Paramatma is inside. So this is showing that the real reason that anyone loves anyone is because of the Supreme Lord living in our heart. But because we don't have proper knowledge, therefore our all activities and affections, everything is expressed in a misguided way. So this is actually what Yajnavalkya Rishi is saying, that the husband is not there for the sake of the husband, but because everything is dear to us, because of the Atma. So, but Chavak Rishi, he says, the meaning of this is that it can't be that the husband is dear because of his soul, because the wife has never seen the soul. What is she seeing? The body. So she loves the husband's body because she's never seen his soul. So because the Aranyaka Upanishad said that the husband is dear because of the Atma, therefore Atma means the body. That's the Praman. Right?
So
do you understand?
Yes. So it's not stinky, doesn't it?
No.
Praman from
It doesn't. Even the devil can quote scripture, right? So Aristanasam Prabhu is saying, well, he's not Nastic, he must be Astic, because he's quoting the scripture. But even the devil can quote scripture to support his philosophy, doesn't mean he believes in it. So Chavak Darshan is not based on scripture, but to convince others for arguments, he will say, hey look, you follow the Vedas, alright. Here the Vedas say that the husband is dear to the wife because of Atma. She's never seen his soul, so Atma means the body. So, this is materialism. What is Atma, the self? This physical form. Now we go on to Buddhism. So, Gautam Buddha did not make any definitive statements about the existence or the non-existence of Atma, the soul. Rather, he wanted to base his philosophy simply on our experience. It's a bit like phenomenology. What are you experiencing right now? Let's look at those different components. And even though he agrees with us that material existence is suffering, and that one has to make a solution to the problem of material existence, but he's only dealing with more or less phenomenology. What do we experience, and explaining everything in that way. So the conditioned souls, they're not really aware, they don't have an awareness of the self. So the self was outside the purview of his presentation. So Gautam Buddha only spoke about what he calls the 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas. So they are first of all Roop. We experience forms made of, and for him there are 4 elements: earth, water, fire and air. Because Akash is, does the ether exist or not? That's been a philosophical argument that's been going on for centuries. Even until in the early part of the previous century, even scientists believed that there was something called ether. But then Albert Einstein presented his theory of relativity, which dispensed of the necessity of presenting ether as an element. So then ether went out of fashion when the theory of relativity came in. So Buddha, he doesn't have ether in his metaphysics. So the first skandha of Buddhism is called Roop, the forms of the elements, earth, water, fire and air. Then second skandha is Vedana, feelings. So this is why Buddhism is very popular today. People are really into their feelings. So that means feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and so on. We can see that in modern society, the feeling of pleasure and the freedom to be able to experience it has been ensconced as the topmost values, the topmost virtues of existence. So this is a complete disaster for society, because the pursuit of pleasure just causes one to become more and more addicted and more irrational and incapable of thinking in long term about the effects of one's actions. So that's a disaster. So the second skandha is Vedana, feelings. Then the third one is called Sangya. It means conceptual knowledge. So we see the world, we have feelings, and we carry around conceptions about them. So that's conceptual knowledge. That's the third skandha. And then there's Sankhara, which for us is really samskara. We have impressions in our mind, and that is pushing us to act. So for Buddha, those impressions are the same as volition. Volition means like what you would call your free will, your desire, your will. I want to do this, I want to do this. It's just a product of samskars. So then the fifth skandha is called Vigyan, consciousness. So for Buddha, all of these are material and they're always just in a state of flux. So then later, after Gautam Buddha, came a very famous Buddhist named Nagarjuna. So Nagarjuna, he was not neutral like Buddha, but he made definitive statement. There is no existence of Atma. The Atma definitely doesn't exist. Only these 5 skandhas exist. And there's no Atma, which is a substratum of that experience. There's just all these things in a flux. And there's no such thing as Atma. So then, so for Charvak, there's no Atma, it's just the body. Body is the self. For Buddha, there's no Atma. Atma doesn't exist in Buddhism. Then Jainism. In Jainism, they say the self is spiritual. There's an infinite number of selves and they're all individual. So, in that respect, we agree with them. But they say that the Jiva is not atomic. And he's also not all-pervading. But the Jiva is medium-sized. And he takes on, he becomes whatever size body he has. So if the Jiva, if the Atma is in the body of an ant, then the Atma is that big. And if the Atma is in the body of an elephant, it's that big. So the Jiva just takes on the size of the form that he's inhabiting. So, that means that when the Jiva becomes liberated, then he suddenly has infinite power, infinite perception, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, because he's no longer bound. So everything about him becomes infinite when he's liberated. That's the selling point of Jainism. Do you want infinite power? So, then, now we just had a brief look at the Nastic Darshans. Now we're coming to the Astic Darshans. Beginning with Nyay, logic and Vaisheshik. The 6 Darshans are usually looked at in pairs because they have a lot of things in common. The first 2 and then the second 2 and then the third 2. They have things in common, so they're often looked at together. So we can look at Nyay and Vaisheshik Darshan together. So the Atma is distinct from the body. So far so good. The Atma is eternal. Okay, we can also tick that box. The Atma has no parts. That's Ekarup, that means it's uniform. And the Atmas are plural. There are many of them, and each one is an individual. So far, so good. Then, every Atma is all-pervading. Okay. Now, my dear Nyayika friend, we'll have to beg to differ there. It's very politically correct these days to agree with everyone, right? So, but we don't do that. So we have to disagree with the followers of Nyaya and Vaisheshik here. No, the Atma is not all-pervading. And now he's really going off the track. In the logic school and the Vaisheshik school, the Atma is not conscious. It has no consciousness. Yeah. Not only is they think it's all pervading, but the Atma has no consciousness. It's only when the Atma comes in contact with the mind, then consciousness is an incidental quality that arises by contact of the soul with the mind. Now, the scholars of Nyaya and Vaisheshik, they don't make a distinction between knowledge and consciousness. In other words, what you're conscious of now, that's your consciousness. In other words, we tend to think of consciousness being like a light that reveals an object that you're conscious of. Just like a lamp reveals a pot. So consciousness might be compared to the light, and then within the consciousness there's a content of consciousness which is called knowledge. But in the logic school, Nyaya and Vaisheshik, they make no distinction between consciousness and the content of consciousness. Once I was when I was traveling, actually it was in Goa, and I met one doctor, a doctor from England, and he was saying that I don't believe in the soul. I don't believe in the soul. Because my mother, who I love very much, she got Alzheimer's disease. And as the disease was progressing more and more, her personality completely changed. She became angry. She was such a gentle person and very compassionate, very empathetic, and very loving. But as the disease progressed, her whole personality changed, and she became irritable, critical, aggressive, depressed, and she even, at one point she couldn't recognize me, and I also couldn't recognize her. And I thought, this is not my mother anymore. So he was thinking that her awareness what she was aware of was her awareness. He's not making a distinction. Before, she was a soul with the quality of consciousness, and she was conscious of having a mind that was very friendly and compassionate. And then when she became diseased, she was still a soul with a consciousness that was aware of having a mind that was very irritable and aggressive. So he wasn't making a distinction between consciousness and the content of the consciousness. And so he concluded that there's no such thing as the soul, because when the brain deteriorates, then that person changes. Because he's thinking that the soul must be the personality. So if the matter breaks down, then the personality changes. So the soul being the personality, there's no such thing as a soul, there's just the material elements. So, in a similar way, in Nyaya and Vaisheshik, they don't make a distinction between consciousness and the content of consciousness. And so, what forms and shapes are in the mind, that's consciousness. And it comes about when the soul is in contact with the mind. So when a person is liberated and the soul is disconnected from the mind, now the soul is inert. The Atma is actually Jad. It's inert in the liberated state. This is the conclusion of Nyaya and Vaisheshik philosophies.
That's their Praman.
So, in the liberated state, the soul is an inert substance, and consciousness is part of the field, actually. Whereas the first thing that Mahaprabhu was teaching is that, no, the soul is Ketragya, is the knower of the field. So the soul is conscious, has consciousness, and is aware of the field. But in Nyaya, consciousness and the content, the things that are in your mind, are the same thing. And it only comes about when the Atma is in contact with the mind, with matter. So when it's separated, then Atma is inert.
What is their Praman? From where they take that? In the Upanishads or?
Well, you know, all of these, they only nominally accept Shastra. In other words, they take something from here and something from there, but they don't take it as a whole. Yeah.
What kind of part of the Vedas they take to justify that?
Well, you can take Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 13, Krishna describes the field. And he says, happiness and distress and all these things, they're all part of the field. Knowledge, happiness, it's all part of the field. So on the basis of that, you could make an argument that when the soul is disconnected from the field, he has no happiness, distress, and no knowledge. So, now we come to Mimamsa. In Mimamsa philosophy of Jaimini Rishi, then the Atmas are plural. Good. The Atmas are eternal. The Atmas are distinct from the body. But the Atmas are all-pervading. You see, this is kind of an all-pervading mistake about being all-pervading. In Mimamsa, the Atma is a knower. That means he has Gyatritva, the quality of being a knower. He is an agent. He has Kartritva, agency. That means he's a doer. He decides what to do. And he has Bhoktritva. He's an experiencer. And he can taste things, enjoy, or suffer even. But that quality, just like in Nyaya, the consciousness is a quality not inherent in the Atma, but it arises when in the matter, but only when the Atma is in contact with matter. So in the same way, in Mimamsa, the Jiva, the Atma, only becomes an agent, Kartritva, Gyatritva and Bhoktritva, when he's in contact with matter. And if he's liberated from matter, then he doesn't have those qualities. They are not part of the Jiva himself. They're incidental qualities coming from the contact with matter. In Mimamsa, they don't actually believe that liberation exists, that the soul can be separated. And that's why they teach that you should do karma kanda. You should do karmic rituals so that you can go to heaven. And you should always do these karmic rituals so that you can always be on the top of the karmic pile. Right? Because some jivas on the top, some are in the middle, some are at the bottom, some are going round and round. So in karma kanda you do these rituals so that you can always be in heaven. Now we come to Yoga and Sankhya. They can be taken together. The common point of Yoga and Sankhya is they both deal with the idea of Purush and Prakriti. So Prakriti means the material energy, And Purush means the souls. So yoga is actually a dualistic philosophy, and Sankhya also. In Sankhya, the souls are plural. That's good. The souls are eternal. Also good. The souls are not the body or mind. That's also good. But again, this all-pervading misconception. Yoga and Sankhya say that the Atma is all-pervading. Okay. You see why Mahaprabhu was teaching right at the beginning. Keshagyara Shatabhagasya. It's so foundational. Because Mahaprabhu is speaking in a culture, in a society where all the followers of these different philosophies think that the soul is all-pervading. If they believe in the soul, that is. So, in Yoga and Sankhya, the soul is the subject of knowledge. But is never the object of knowledge. If the soul knows something, whatever the soul knows is just a chitta vritti. It's a mental modification of the field. If the soul knows something, then it's always a mental modification. Because the soul himself is the jnana matra. He's just consciousness. So this raises a very interesting subject. The way that jnana, the word jnana is used in Shastra. You find the word jnana in many places. It's all in Bhagavad Gita. You'll probably find it dozens and dozens of times, the word jnana. In the commentaries on Vedanta Sutra of the impersonalists, jnana, jnana, jnana. For them, the goal of life is mukti, and the method to attain it is jnana. But our Param Gurudev would say, this is not the true meaning of Vedanta, because you cannot find the word jnana anywhere in Vedanta Sutra. So, the word jnana, we're going to look at the etymology of the word jnana. There are three meanings that can be derived from etymology. So the first one is gyapti jnanam. Gyapti jnanam. Jnana means knowledge as an awareness that only illuminates the subject. In other words, jnana is a knowledge where the Atma only knows himself. He's only aware of himself and not anything else. That's one kind of jnana. In other words, this jnana reveals oneself but doesn't reveal other subjects. Or other objects, sorry. So it's subjective. It's a self-awareness, but not awareness of anything beyond the self. Then, the next etymological meaning of jnana is gyayate anena iti jnanam. Knowledge is that by which another object is known. Right? So, in the first case, we're looking at self-awareness. Jnana is self-awareness. And then in the second case, jnana as knowing something else. So in other words, this knowledge is the content of knowledge, the content which is revealed to a knowing subject. So that is jnana. Then the third type of knowledge, meaning of knowledge, jnanam asti asmin. Asmin means in this. Jnanam asti asmin iti. The word jnana is used to indicate that in which knowledge exists. In other words, it is the quality of a being who contains content knowledge. Understand? So jnana is three things: Gyan is self-awareness. Gyan can mean not content, something else, or it can mean the substratum of the content. So Gyan is used in these three ways in Shastra. So, in the yoga, there is only the first meaning. The Atma can have knowledge, but it's only Gyaptir Jnanam, it's only a self-awareness, and if there's awareness of any object, then that's not part of the soul, that's a chitta-vritti, it's a modification of the field. Okay? So, in Yoga and Sankhya, the Purush is Jnana Matra. He's just self-knowledge. So, in other words, in Yoga and Sankhya, the soul is not a Vastu that has the quality of consciousness, but he's just consciousness. Jnana Matra means just self-awareness. Yeah? So the Atma is not a Vastu, a substance, which has different gunas, not material gunas, which has different virtues, different qualities. As we conceive of the soul as being a Vastu, a substance, which has certain qualities. But in Yoga and Sankhya, what we call consciousness, that's actually what the soul is. It's not the substratum, a substance which is the substratum of the quality of consciousness, but just consciousness, Jnana Matra. So, as far as bliss is concerned, now we say the Atma is Satchidananda, right? But because in Yoga and Sankhya, the Atma is a Jnana Matra, only consciousness, then in their perspective, Ananda is part of the field. It comes from Sattva Gun. Comes from Sattva Gun. So ultimately, you have to become free from Ananda. So many of you may say, well, I'm already free from Ananda. But yeah. So for them, Ananda is a Sattvic experience, and that's why when the yogi goes into Samadhi, Sampragyata Samadhi, then he goes through the stages. Savitaka Samadhi, Nirvitaka Samadhi, Savichar Samadhi, Nirvichar Samadhi. And then the next lane is Sananda. Sananda Sampragyata Samadhi. And it's a stage where the Atma is aware of not the objects of the senses, but the very mechanism of the senses themselves. How is it that the senses are perceiving their objects? So the senses are atomic, and the pran, the mukhya pran is atomic, and the mukhya pran is empowering the senses. So the yogi in his trance, Sananda Samadhi, doesn't see the sense objects like we do, but he's so inside, he's seeing the very function by which sense objects are experienced. And when he does that, then he feels such sattvic joy. So that's called Sananda Sampragyata Samadhi. And then he goes to Sasmita Sampragyata Samadhi, but his goal is to give that up and go into Asampragyata Samadhi, Kaivalya, in which you'll be free from the awareness of I-ness. There'll be no vantage point of experience, because he's the all-pervading Jnana Matra, all-pervading consciousness with no content. So there's no I as a subject and an object. Subject-object duality has been dissolved, and Kaivalya. So that is the Asampragyata Samadhi. So Anandamayo Vyasat, the Supreme Truth is full of Ananda, full of Rasa. Saivayam Labdhanandi Bhavati. And those who attain that Rasa, they become full of Ananda. But the yogi is saying Ananda is a part of the material world. It's a mental modification. It's a sattvic modification in Sananda Sampragyata Samadhi. And you have to get rid of that. So then, so the yogis don't quite make it to the conclusion. Now we come to Advaita Vedanta. In the Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya, then the jivas are not plural. They're not individual. In fact, the jivas don't really exist. There's only Brahman. There's the light of Brahman, and we're all that Brahman. Gatakash Patakash. Means that space is everywhere, but when you have a pot, it seems like a piece of the space has been separated from the rest of the space. But actually the pot is gross. So the space is also inside the pot, actually. So you're only thinking that a portion of space has been separated, but actually the space was never separated. And that becomes obvious when the pot is broken, and Gatakash Patakash, the Akash in the pot becomes one with the Akash out of the pot. But actually, it was never not one, it always was. You see? So, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Tattvamasi, you are Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam, everything is Brahman. Prajnanam Brahman. Knowledge is, the Brahman is only Gyan. And that Gyan is also of the sense of only not knowledge of an object, or not that in which knowledge resides of a content, but just consciousness, like a Gyan Matra also, as well. So, Prajnanam Brahma. So this is very, of all the philosophies, this is the worst one. This is the absolute worst one. Because there's no difference between the Atma, between even different Atmas. Even. There's not even different Atmas don't even exist. There's no difference between the truth, the supreme truth and the soul. The supreme truth is not the foundation or the cause of the other relative truths. Like we say, Janmadhyasya, what is Brahma? That from which everything is emanated. But for Shankaracharya, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. Only the light of Brahman is true, and the universe, the world is false. So then, how do jivas come about? The idea of being an individual being is just an empirical experience. That's called Vyavaharik Satta. But it's not real. So they explain it by saying that the jiva is Brahma reflected in Maya. So when Brahman is reflected in Maya, illusion, then portion of Brahma is either Pratibimba, reflected in Maya, or covered by a designation of Maya. So the theory of reflection is called Pratibimbavad, that the jiva is a reflection of Brahma in Maya, and the idea that Maya circumscribes, or is like an upadhi, a designation covering a small piece of Brahman, then that is called Parischedavad, Parisched, that Brahman is separated, Parisched. But this is ridiculous, because if only Brahman exists, then where did this Maya come from? If only Brahman exists, then if it could be reflected, there must be a reflecting medium. If Brahman has no qualities, then something that has no qualities doesn't have a reflection. So there are millions of problems with Advaitavad. That's another subject. And all those problems have been described in great detail by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sarva Sambhadini commentary on Tattva Sandarbha. And also they've been refuted by Srila Baladevi Debushan in his Govinda Bhasya commentary on Vedanta Sutra. But Advaita Vedanta is extremely antithetical for bhakti, because for devotion to exist, there has to be love. For love to exist, there has to be two. Otherwise you love yourself. Loving yourself is not called love. That's called vanity, right? So, we can give it just a brief summary. All the philosophers, except for Advaita, say that the Atmas are plural. Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga and Advaita say that the Atma is all-pervading.
Can you put some more light on that, Maharaj? All-pervading. What does it really mean, all-pervading?
It means everywhere.
They are plural. That means they're all individual.
They're plural and everywhere. Yeah, that means they pervade each other as well. So, yeah, I know. I totally sympathize with your question. But
Means that there will be conflict.
No. That's because you're projecting a material idea now. Right? Let's say, there's a sleeping bag, right? And it's quite small. So you get in your sleeping bag and you're all pervading in the sleeping bag. So then someone else comes along and they're cold and they're like, well, I'd like to also be in the sleeping bag. So then they make a conflict because you have two physical objects and they can't be all pervading in the same place. So, but the spiritual things, they can be plural and all pervading. Right? So that's their idea. So, because we don't agree with, because then everyone's pervading everyone else, and then you would be in control. So that's why Mahaprabhu quotes this verse of the Vedas personified, saying, if the jivas were all pervading, then they couldn't be controlled by God, what to speak of control by Maya. But we see that the living entities are. They're under the limitations of the material energy. So they can't be all pervading. So, then, the next one, only Javak and the Jains say that the Atma is medium-sized. And the Vaishnavas say the Atma is Anu, atomic. So, in Sankhya and Yoga, the agency, that is the kartritva, the ability to act, is only in Prakriti. The Atmas can't act. When they come in contact with Prakriti, now Prakriti is doing the action. But in Nyaya and Vaisheshik, when the living entities come in contact with the matter, then they become agents, but they're only agents while they're in contact with the matter. But in our Gaudiya philosophy, the jiva itself is inherently kartritva, has the quality of being an agent. Can you see the difference between the three? In Sankhya and Yoga, the kartritva, the agency, the ability to act, is only in Prakriti. So when the jiva is separated from the Purush, is separated from Prakriti, then he cannot be an agent. He was never an agent, he just thought that he was an agent. In Nyaya and Vaisheshik, the jiva is an agent, but only when he's in contact. It's not an illusion that he's an agent. He's really an agent when he's in contact with Prakriti. But when he's liberated, then he's no longer an agent. So the material energy has no kartritva, and the jiva has no kartritva, but only when they're together, then kartritva is an incidental quality for them. So see the difference between Sankhya and Yoga and Nyaya and Vaisheshik. Whereas in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the jiva inherently has kartritva, gyatritva and bhoktritva. So now, we gave the overview of the different ideas. So in contrast, we can see very clearly what is our Gaudiya Siddhanta. And so now we come to our verse for today. Jiva-Tattva Muni is a sage. Jiva-Tattva Muni. Jiva-Tattva Muni. Oh, J-A-M, it's a long A. You can write it there. J-A, long A. Ja-M, long A, Jama, 3. T-R, no, dot underneath the R. It's a ri. It's a vowel. Yeah. So Jiva-Tattva Muni, he has written a commentary on some verses from the Padma Purana. And his verses just basically paraphrase what is written in the Padma Purana about the Jiva. That the Jiva is anu, atomic, that he's not the body and so on. It paraphrases all of this. But when Jiva Goswami wants to explain to us Jiva-Tattva, he doesn't base his explanation on the original verse of the Padma Purana. That's Padma Purana Uttarakanda, chapter 226, verses 34 to 37. He doesn't base it on the original verses of the Padma Purana, but he's basing his presentation on the paraphrase of Jamatri Rishi. And the reason he does this is because there's a few elements, there's just a few points which are in his explanation which you can't find in the original verses he's paraphrasing. So it's almost the same, but there are a few points. And those few points are this line here, Gyatritva, Kartritva, Bhoktritva. Because it was really important to establish these three things to separate the Gaudiya Vaishnava Jiva-Tattva from other philosophies who grant Kartritva, Gyatritva, agency, knowledge, and the power to experience, but they grant it to be not a function actually of the Atma, but to the material energy, or an incidental quality that arises only when the Atma is in contact with the material energy. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just go through the 4 verses of Jamatri Muni. And of the 4, this is the 4th verse. And this is the 4th verse. It's the most, perhaps most complex one. So we have it on the board. And if you want to learn one verse about Jiva-Tattva, that's your verse. If you only know one verse about Jiva-Tattva, that's the one. It's a good one, because it contains the speciality of our conception in opposition to all the other different philosophies. But the other verses are pretty good too, so we're going to go through them. Some of the points are basic. So, first he says, Atmana Devo Nanaro, means the Atma is not a demigod. Atmana Devo Nanaro, and not a human being. So we're starting with the basics here. Natiryak, the Atma is not an animal. So actually there's a Christian theologian, Thomas Aquinas, and he said that there were human souls and animal souls, that they're different. The souls in human bodies and animal bodies are actually different. You see? So here a distinction is made that the soul has no relation with the body, whether it's human or animal, or demigod. Stavaro nacha. The Atma is not a stavara, that is a non-moving living entity. So non-moving living also have souls. But whether you're a human, a demigod, an animal, or a plant, then all of these are bodies, they are not the identity of the self. So, na deho, the soul is not his body. The soul, nendriyam, is not the senses. So someone might think that the soul has the power to perceive, and therefore the senses are actually a quality of the soul. But he said nendriyam, the Atma is not the senses. Naiva manaha. Many people think that, I'm not this body, but I'm my thoughts, my mind. We say, no, you're not the mind. Then, prano na. The soul is not the pran, the life force. Napidihi. The soul is not the intelligence. Na jado. The soul is not inert. So you may remember that in Nyaya and Vaisheshik, when the soul is liberated, he becomes inert, because consciousness is part of the material energy. So na jado, he's not inert. Na vikari, he does not undergo any transformation. So that means the soul doesn't become the size of an ant or the size of an elephant, because he's na vikari, untransformable. Jnana matra mako nacha, and he's not Gyan matra. So, in Yoga and Sankhya, they're saying the soul is not a substance with consciousness, but it's just Gyan matra, only consciousness itself. So, Geometry is saying, no, Jnana matratmako nacha. But what is he? Now, this is a very beautiful phrase. Swasmai swayam prakashaha. Swasmai swayam prakashaha. What does that mean? So, very beautiful. The word prakash, that it means luminous. And that luminosity can be of two kinds. It can be prakash as a gun, a quality, or prakash as a dravya, a substance. So is prakash a dravya? Is it a substance? Or is it a quality that a substance has? So it can be seen in both ways. So, when prakash is a quality, it makes visible the source of its own luminosity. In other words, that is the self-knowing. So that's the first meaning of the word jnana. Gyapti jnanam. That knowledge or illumination is simply awareness, and that awareness is the awareness of the very thing that's aware and has no object. Right? So, is it clear?
I translated, yes, but
okay.
I think it's...
So that's the meaning. Okay. And then you have prakash as dravya. That means a substance. And that substance makes itself visible to others and makes other objects visible. Right? So that is prakash. Now the soul is not prakash as gun or as dravya only. Why? Give an example that the soul is prakash as a gun. That means it's self-luminous, in the sense it's illuminating itself. It's aware of itself. So that's called swasmai swayam prakash. It illuminates itself. And swayam prakash means that a substance, its light reveals itself to other people and reveals other objects. Right? So that's Swayam Prakash. So we cannot say that the soul is Swayam Prakash. Why? Because a lamp, let's say you have a candle is Swayam Prakash. The light of the candle reveals the candle to other people, and the light of the candle also illuminates other objects. But the candle is not aware of its own luminosity. So a candle is Swayam Prakash, but not Swasmai Swayam Prakash. Right? So that's why the Jiva is called Swasmai Swayam Prakash, because the light of the Jiva can be seen by others. The light of the Jiva illuminates other objects, and the light of the Jiva illuminates his own existence, aware of himself. So we cannot say that the Jiva is only the Swasmai Prakash, aware of itself. We cannot say he's only Swayam Prakash, but he's Swasmai Swayam Prakash.
Swasmai Sama Prakash.
Swasmai Swayam Prakash. Okay? So in the Jiva, all three definitions of Gyan, Gyapti Gyanam, Gyayate Anena iti Gyanam, and Gyanamasti Asmin iti, all are present in the Jiva. Whereas the other philosophies only take one of them or two of them or like that. So in Gaudiya Siddhanta, the Jiva is Swasmai Swayam Prakash. His illumination can be seen by others. His illumination illuminates other objects, and his illumination illuminates himself. Yes, so all three. Swasmai Swayam Prakash.
Swasmai Swayam Prakash illuminates himself, others, and the third one who
Can be seen.
It can be seen by others.
What does it mean he illuminates other objects? I can...
Well, if you light a candle, then when you light the candle, then you can see the pot. In the dark, you couldn't see the pot, but when you put the candle, then the candle illuminated. So it not only revealed the pot, but it's also revealing itself to you.
So now, in the case of Atma, what am I illuminating? I can, because of me, my light, my consciousness, I can realize myself. Others can realize me, but what am I illuminating? What are the objects?
So it's just
everything you're seeing, right, is illuminated to you. Right? People can see you, right? But you can also see them. So your luminosity is enabling them to see you. And your luminosity also has a content of the other person that you're seeing. And that's the content of your consciousness. And your luminosity is illuminating yourself. So you know them and you. And reveal yourself to them. Like that. Okay, so all three.
Is the Shakti not coming from Paramatma?
Yes and no. This is where Veda Bed comes in. Right? This is where Veda Bed comes in. So we'll come to it's coming in the description. So it is part of the Dharma of the Jiva, but it's the Dharma of the Jiva that he's the Shakti of the Paramatma as well. So you can say, well, if it weren't for the Paramatma, then he wouldn't have this quality, because they're actually inseparable. But that's going to come. That's actually the last, more or less, and it's coming in the verse on the board. That's coming. Okay, so Swasmai Swayam Prakashaha, then Shad Eka Rupa. Eka Rupa means that he's uniform. Not like this body has, some of it's liquid, some of it's solid. The Swarupa of the Jiva is uniform in nature. And Swarupa Bhak means that he's always situated in his essential nature. Then Chaitanaha, he has consciousness, Vyaktishilascha, and his consciousness can spread out. So in the Gita it said, just as the sun is in one place in the sky, but is present everywhere by his light, so in the same way, the soul situated in one place in the heart is present in one sense all over the body by the extension of his consciousness. So Chid Anandatmakastata, and the Jiva is constitutionally Chit, spiritual, aware, and Anandatmaka, joyful in nature. Aham Artha means that he is the locus of the concept of I. The locus, yeah. He's the locus of the concept of I. For example, many persons say that, ego is really bad, so you have to get rid of the ego. But ego just means I. So if you get rid of the sense of I, then you're not an individual anymore. So we say ahankara. Ahankara, ego in Sanskrit is ahankara, but it literally means ahankara, the I kara, am doing. The sense that we are the actors in this world. When the senses are acting, we think that the soul is the one who's actually moving and doing things. So that's ahankara, the false ego. So we have to be free from false ego, but the soul has aham artha. He has a real sense of I-ness that should not go away. So the jada hankar, the material ego, should go, but the shuddha hankar will remain. Then pratikshetram binaha means there's a different atma in every kshetra. So the body is the field, and in every body there's a different atma. It's not that I am you and you are me and we're all together and I am the walrus. Right? So that just comes from that idea comes from taking LSD.
эта
So,
идея просто приходит от слишком
The Atma's pratik shakram binna. In every body, every Atma is individual. Then, bino nur means binaha anu. The souls are anu, they're not all-pervading, they're atomic, they are partless, and they're subtle, and they are nitya nirmalaha, eternal and eternally pure. They're eternally pure, they're not degraded, they're not contaminated. Then, now we come to our verse for today. It's the fourth one in the list of verses. Tata, and the soul has Jiva-Tattva, the power of knowing. He knows himself and other things. So, he himself is unchanging, but the content of his knowledge can be changing without him himself changing. Jiva-Tattva, Kartritva. The soul is a doer. Now in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ahankara vibodhaiva karta miti mandate. Those who are bewildered by false ego think that themselves the doer of the activities performed by material nature. But then in Vedanta Sutra, it says, Karta shastratavat. Vedanta Sutra directly says, Karta shastratavat. The scriptures give the conclusion that the jiva is a doer. So then how can we reconcile it? So, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan explains, Mamaivangso jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana mana shastran indriyani prakristani karshati. Means, the soul is an eternal angsa, part of the Supreme Lord, individual, forever. And the soul, prakristani karshati. Karshati means that he draws towards himself. Karshati, Krishna means attract. So the jiva, Karshati, draws towards himself mana shastran indriyani. It means that the pran, the mind and the senses are all atomic in nature. And they're situated around the Atma in the region of the heart. And the soul is prakristani karshati. He's drawing the mind and senses towards himself by the power of his will. So Kartrito means he has a will to be an agent. So the jiva is by his will. The example is given. Just as a magnet draws iron towards itself, so the jiva by his Kartritva, his agency, draws the senses and the pran in their atomic forms towards himself. Therefore, he's a doer. Because the word karshati, he draws, is an active verb. Parasmaipada. He is drawing another thing towards himself. So,
and that's giving him suffering.
Now what happens is, when the soul leaves the body, he takes the pran and the senses with him to the next body, and then they manifest in the next body. So he takes his subtle body with him to the next body. Now, his mind and senses are contaminated by the three gunas. So the gunas are causing his mental states and forcing the mind then to act through the senses and perform activities in the world. So, false ego means to think that you're the activities, the doer of the activities of the mind and the senses. But you're not. But you're still the doer because by your will you have drawn the mind and senses which are not under your control, they're under the control of Prakriti, towards yourself, and you're experiencing them. So in that sense, the jiva is not the doer of the activities which are performed by the gunas, but he is the karta, he is the doer in the sense that by his will he's drawn those senses and mind towards himself.
By volition.
Yeah. So, the jiva has Jiva-Tattva, Kartritva and Bhoktritva. Bhoktritva means he's an experiencer, he's an enjoyer, or in some cases he's a sufferer as well. But Bhoktritva means he has inherently the Anubhav Shakti, the ability to experience. Nija Dharmakaha means that is his own dharma. Those are his qualities. Those qualities, Gyatrita, Bhaktrita and Katrita, belong to him. Nija Dharmakaha. So then, Paramatmaika Sheshatva. So, the Jiva is called the Paramatma Parikar. He's an associate of the Paramatma. And his Sheshatva means Shesh means the remainder. Literally means what's left. So that means that he's irreducible. When the Supreme Lord is expanding, Sankarshana Karna Toya Shai, Gaboda Shai, like this, is expanding. Then the last thing is Shesh, right? His last expansion at the bottom of the universe is Shesh Nag. But he's Ananta Shesh, the unlimited Shesh. Right? But really the last expansion of the Lord is the Jiva. He's the Angsa of Paramatma. He's a Paramatma's Parikar. So he's like he's the last, but he's the Shesh of Paramatma. So Paramatmaika Sheshatva, or he's the Paramatma Parikar. He's the last integrated part of the complete whole Paramatma. He's the irreducible remainder. So Paramatmaika Sheshatma. Then Swabhava Savada Swataha. This is all these are the characteristics of his eternal nature. And that is Jiva-Tattva. So you can deliberate on this. That is who you are. That is who you are. Now, you have those characteristics. But Krishna in the spiritual world is enjoying in his internal potency. And Krishna's Swarup, his divine form, only interacts with his Swarup Shakti, the internal potency. Krishna himself does not interact with the external energy or the Jivas, because the Jivas do not have Swarup Shakti in them. And therefore, those Jivas who are Swarup Shakti Anugrahit, they have received the mercy of Bhakti Shakti, the internal potency. Krishna only interacts with them. And therefore, our success of life, our only possibility of attaining perfection is to be connected with a living entity who is Swarup Shakti Anugrahit, who has received the mercy of Krishna's internal potency. And by serving them, by being related to them, now we have a possibility to become known to Krishna. And the possibility that the Swarup Shakti, the internal potency, will come to us. So the Jiva, being weak, cannot overcome the powerful influence of Maya. But when he surrenders to Guru and serves his Guru Parampara, then Krishna's internal energy descends to the Jiva. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryangsu Samyabhak. Now he becomes Swarup Shakti Anugrahit. And only then does he have the potency to overcome the powerful influence of Maya. So Sri Krishna said, Daivi Yasha Gunamayi Mama Maya Durataya Maeva Ye Prapadyante Mayamevam Tarantite. That this material energy consisting of three gunas is very difficult, and by very difficult I mean impossible to overcome. But if someone surrenders to me, Krishna said, and that means Krishna's form in this world that comes before us is Guru-Tattva. So when the living entity surrenders to Krishna through his mediator, transparent via medium of Guru, then the Jiva becomes Swarup Shakti Anugrahit, and then he can easily conquer over the material energy. Gaur Premanand. So, we promised today that we'd take some of the burning questions of the devotees as well. So, because this evening will be the final lecture of this festival, before we take the questions, I'd just like to, let's just recap, just go over the journey that we've been on this week. So when we came here, on the first day, the first class was in the evening. And what did we discuss that day? Don't raise your hand if you know. Yes?
Guru-Tattva.
Yes. So the first subject we discussed, Guru-Tattva, and what evidence did we give to show how one should receive transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master? What was the evidence? Who remembers? Raise your hand. No one remembers. Alas, alas. Huh? We illustrated the process by which one receives transcendental knowledge. How do we illustrate the process? How one receives transcendental knowledge from the Guru? We told, yes, we told it was a conversation between Lomasa Rishi and Yudhishthira Maharaj about the history of Yavakri. Yavakri tried to get spiritual knowledge by doing austerities without submitting to a guru and engaging in exerting himself for a long time and doing swadhyay, very carefully studying the scriptures. And so because of this, he got a blessing that he technically knew everything, theoretically, but when he got into a conflict with Raibhya Rishi, then he was completely defeated. And in the end, he asked the demigods, "How I knew Vedas from other planets that he didn't even know. How come he defeated me?" And all the devatas told him, said, "Because you tried to get knowledge in an inappropriate way. Knowledge only comes by exerting oneself in the service of the spiritual master for a long time, while simultaneously engaging in swadhyay, the study of scripture under his guidance." So it's a very clear example from Shastra. Srila Vyasadeva has given himself to show us the true process, because many persons, they don't want to work hard, or et labora. Pray and work hard. Ora et labora. Persons don't want to work hard and they don't want to study as well. And they think that some or other, if I'm just all sentimental and say Jai Gurudev, I'm going to get transcendental knowledge. No, that's not how it works. So, and the example is the history of Bharadwaj Rishi, Raibhya Rishi, and the son of Bharadwaj, Yavakri, and the sons of Raibhya Rishi, who were Paravasu and Arvavasu. Okay, so that was, I'm glad everyone has already forgotten the first lecture.
No.
Okay, then the next morning, what was the subject of the next morning? Praman Tattva. So I spoke this Praman Tattva because after Guru Tattva, this is the next foundational subject. How do we know that what Gurudev is teaching us is true or not? First you understand Guru. Now, what he say, is it true or not? So that is the subject of Praman, means epistemology, not philosophy, but the philosophy of knowledge itself. How do you attain knowledge? So, because sometimes persons think that there are so many paths, and I've just got to find out which is my path. But this is actually dishonest. Philosophy doesn't begin with a path. It begins with epistemology. That is a comparison of why certain paths are more valid than other paths. So a philosopher that just begins with his philosophy is not honest. You always have to begin with epistemology. Why? What are the reasons that support the fact that what I'm going to teach you is a fact, that it's valid knowledge? So we very minutely analyzed the epistemology of different paths and showed how they don't work. And by the logic of the Shesh, the logic of the remainder, the path that remains is Shabda Brahma, Aprakrita Vachana, the transcendental sound, which is transmitted in Guru Parampara, that gives you a direct spurti of revelation of reality. So, that day we discussed Praman Tattva. Now, the Praman is the sound of the Vedas, but of all the Vedic literatures, which is the best? Srimad Bhagavatam. But Srimad Bhagavatam has 4 types of language. Lokik Bhasha, Paramat Bhasha, Swamat Bhasha, and Samadhi Bhasha. So of all types of language, which language is the best? Now that Samadhi Bhasha, those words have different semantic powers. Abhida Briti, Lakshan Briti, Vyanjan Briti, and Tatparya Briti. So which Briti should we take? Tatparya Briti, not exclusively, but because Tatparya Briti includes all the Britis taken together. And what does the Tatparya Briti tell us? Radha Dasya. This is Praman Tattva. So the best Praman is the Tatparya Briti of the Samadhi Bhasya of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the best of all Shabda Praman. Okay. Pranam Tattva. Okay. Class number 2. Okay. We're just trying to recap what was our journey this week. So, then, in the evening on that day, we relaxed a little bit, and we just heard the glories of Giraj Govardhan. But it wasn't an objective glory of Giraj Govardhan. It was the subjective glory of Giraj Govardhan through the Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani. That's the most important thing. And so then, this was really then the continuation of the conclusion of Praman, that Radha Dasyam is the highest. And this is the example of Radha Dasyam. To not see Vrindavan from your own subjective perspective, but see Vrindavan through the Mahabhav of Radhika's love. That means that the Manjaris are always hearts are one with her, become pervaded by her Madanakya Mahabhav. So, the classes are kind of connected. There is a method in my madness. So then the next morning, we discussed a verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. What was that? Kim Chitram Achyuta Tavaidasa Sheshabhan. We actually began with the subject of Sharnagati because that's the doorway into Bhakti. But then we segued into the important topic of, well, what's the benefit? What are the features and benefits of this Sharnagati? And one of the wonderful features and benefits of Sharnagati is when you surrender to Krishna, Krishna surrenders to you. And Krishna becomes Atmasat to you. Just like as you pray, Oh Gurudev, make me Atmasat. Krishna becomes Atmasat to his devotees. So who would not surrender to Krishna? It's so beautiful. And we illustrated that with a very, very beautiful verse of Uddhav saying, hey, it's not surprising that Krishna becomes Atmasat. He totally gives himself to his devotees who are surrendered to him. When in Vrindavan, he even feels pleasure in just playing with the insects and the animals. Even though all the great demigods, the jewels on their crowns are polishing his footstool, but in Vrindavan, Krishna derives pleasure playing with the bumblebees and the cows and the birds and the parrots. So, we're moving on to we're moving on to the subject of the Swarupa of Krishna, his internal psychology. What is he like? What's Krishna really like? We know he's a blue cowboy and he plays a flute and he stands in a crooked way. But what is he really like? So then, in the evening of that day, what did we discuss? Yes, the glories of Haridas Thakur and how through the glories of Haridas Thakur, the glories of the holy name are revealed. Especially that the loud chanting of the holy name is the topmost expression of bhakti. So Kirtan is superior to Smaran, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtana. So then, the next morning, The next morning,
Следующим утром
what did we discuss? Who remembers?
дома обсуждали,
Spoke about how Vedanta brings one from duality
Yes,
to
yes.
non-duality.
Very, very good. Very good. Because that's really the extracting essence of the whole discussion. That our consciousness in this world
наше сознание
is
закономерно.
Dvandva Mohena Bharata, Isha Dvesha Sumuttena. We're just born into this state of attachment and aversion and bewildered by the dualities of the world. And because God Himself is Advaya Gyan Paratattva, He's the non-dual conscious reality, there's a total disconnect between us and God.
У нас есть, ну, мы полностью
We might pray or whatever we do, or try to think, but our ideas and everything are always wrong.
всегда неправильно.
So how do we go from the dualistic consciousness to the non-dual consciousness? How do we know that non-dual conscious God exists and that He has His own world? So what we looked at are the different types of philosophy, and we wanted to connect in Europe the philosophy of ancient Europe, the Greeks, in a seamless way with the appearance of Christianity, which is Christianity. The theology of Christianity is not an irrational, illogical, dogmatic thing. It's based on extremely sound principles, philosophical principles. That's why the Gospel according to John begins, in the beginning was the Word, means was the Logos. And the Logos was God, the Logos was with God, and the Logos became flesh. And that was Jesus. In other words, we see around us in the world cause and effect. The world is rational in one sense. And God Himself is a reasonable person, super reasonable person. God is not like a bipolar person with multiple personality disorder and they're all fighting with each other. God Himself is harmonious. God Himself is a reasonable person. Doesn't mean that He's not achincha, inconceivable. Doesn't mean that He can't contradict logic. But there are reasons why He acts. There are reasons why He does inconceivable things. Right? He's not a psycho. He's really nice. He's a reasonable person. So because God is reasonable, His reality is reasonable. So God's reason is called Logos. So in Christianity, Jesus is called the incarnation of God's Logos, His reason. Just repeat. In Christianity, Jesus is going to be the incarnation of God's divine reason on earth. So one who's following Jesus is considered to be acting in the highest rational way. And those who are not following His example of humility and devotion and service, they're not truly rational. Why? Because their rationale has become contaminated and polluted by Anya-Bilas, desires to enjoy the world. As long as you have Anya-Bilas, desires to enjoy the world, you cannot be truly rational. You can't be a rational being. Because you use logic to justify what you want to do. So you can be logical, but you cannot be rational. Because logic is what we apply to some premises. And logic cannot generate its own premises. So we choose irrational premises and then apply our logic to them. So you can be logical, but without being rational. So Logos is the rationale, and logic is included in that as well. So we discussed how all philosophies can fit in 4 different categories: realism, exaggerated realism, moderate realism, conceptualism, and nominalism. So that means all these words actually refer to the subject of universals. Exaggerated realism means that the universals are real and they have their own world. Moderate realism means universals are real, but they only exist in this world. And that's like Jati or Samanya, the category of Jati in the Nyaya of Gautam Rishi. Then there's conceptualism, means universals don't exist except for in your mind. And then lastly, nominalism, that means that universals don't even exist in your mind, even your thoughts are particulars. You can't conceive of a generic house, you always perceive of a particular house, like that. So we discussed in that class how our chitta expands and contracts. And when it's contracted, we cannot think in terms of cause and effect. In a long chain, we make a causal closure. We just say this is the cause right in front of us. Yeah, the cat and the dog, right? We make a causal closure. We just close the chain of causation and say, okay, this is my premise, I'm going to apply my logic to this. But when the chitta is expanded, then we think about the chain of cause and effect. And because when we think about the chain of cause, the ultimate cause, we'll find that matter cannot be the cause of its own forms. So there must be some other forms that these forms are based on. So the exaggerated realism is the product of expanded consciousness. Right? Not fully expanded, but pretty expanded consciousness. And that's the basis of the ancient Greek worldview, Platonism, and also the basis of Christianity was always, it was never really Hebraic. It was always Hellenic or Greek in nature from the very beginning. All the apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, these are all Greek names. All the area of Galilee where Jesus lived and was, these were all Greek or formerly Greek and now Roman colonies, actually. So there's a direct development between the ancient Greek philosophy and the theistic Christianity. That's an interesting subject. We can speak on that on another day. But that's a very interesting subject. In fact, in one of the books of Plato, he wrote that once Socrates said, the Logos will appear in the shape of a cross. And it's there like hundreds of years before Jesus. That the Logos will appear. So, one of the patron saint of philosophers, Saint Justin, he said that before Supreme Lord sent his son to this world, he sent Socrates and Plato to prepare the ground for the philosophical ground for the conclusion that the highest thing is to love God and that there is a world beyond this world. So that's a matter of faith. But if someone doesn't have faith, they can philosophically, through the exaggerated realism, come to the conclusion that there's another world and that's the real world and that's our real home and that's where we should be. Like that. So the point we're making here is that when the consciousness is expanded, then you can think about another world and the origin of that world. God, the Logos, the origin of the forms. But when the consciousness is contracted, then your universals are only in objects, like Aristotle, or like Gautam Rishi. And then it becomes in concepts. Or was it I think Pierre Abelard, there was a French philosopher, and there's another one. I think his name was Robert Grossetête. He was also a French philosopher. Conceptualism. And then it comes down to nominalism. So probably the earliest philosopher of nominalism was William of Ockham. Like that. And this nominalism is what everyone has been educated in today. We've been trained to think without even thinking that if there's an object in front of us, we can explain it in terms of itself, irrationally and arbitrarily, ripped out of its context completely, without reference to anything higher. And we think that's totally rational and normal, but it's not. It's actually not. It's a way of thinking which is a product of contracted consciousness. So that is the gross materialism. So the Logos, which is the origin of the forms, is ultimately who? Paramatma. So because even Plato could not explain how is it that the forms of these worlds, the particulars, participate in the universals. But we know it is because the universals are not only transcendent, but they're immanent. That is, Paramatma is transcendental, but is also immanent within everything, and he causes that one substance, Prakriti, to become all of those forms. And therefore, if you go through, your consciousness expands from nominalism to conceptualism, and ultimately to exaggerated realism. The fullest expansion is that everything is the form of Paramatma, and now you've come to non-dual consciousness and the conclusion of Vedanta. Okay? So,
Paramatma Kirtan.
so, and the reason I wanted to come to that point of Paramatma, because then I wanted to explain Jiva-Tattva. You cannot understand the Jiva without knowing Paramatma first, because the Jiva is Paramatma Parikar. Is the Sheshatva. Paramatmaika Sheshatva we discussed today. See? So you may be thinking that every day I'm telling something else, but I actually have a plan for the week. Right? So this is the flow. So that day, essentially, we were discussing that Vedanta is a meta-philosophy. It's not only a philosophy that refutes all other philosophies, but it also accounts for why those philosophies exist as the product of different states of contraction or expansion of the citta. Okay? So Vedanta is meta-philosophy. So that was the subject in the morning. Then in the evening, what was the subject in the evening?
The Lila. When Krishna went to Ban.
The question was, in between Rasa Lila and Yugal Geet, why is this pastime of Nanda Maharaj being chewed up by a python in between these two chapters? So of course the answer is that incident of Nanda Maharaj being attacked took place in Ambikavan. And Ambikavan was a big Tirtha Yatra that all the Brijvasis went on. And Krishna wanted to go on that because after the Ras Lila, then they started doing Ras Lila every night. And the in-laws got suspicious and grounded the gopis. And they couldn't get out. And so when the month of Falgun was coming in Shivaratri, Krishna's like, I want to go on Parikrama. But the real reason was to get out of the village and he could have a chance to meet with all the Braj gopis. And he did so in so many different ways. And this was just also an example of how Krishna is atmasat to his devotees. Because he becomes so mad that he took so many different disguises and expanded himself in so many different forms to simultaneously trick and trap the different gopis into meeting with him in Ambikavan. So, what do we have here? Now this connects with the course that we gave last week in Shravanam. Why? Because our Goswamis, knowing that Krishna Lila is filled with all the ras of kavya, of poetry, then Krishna Lila is like a drama. So when a drama is going on, you have the beach, that's the awakening of desire in the hero and the heroine. And then you have to have incidents which are bindus. That means incidents, drops, that water the seed and intensify it and make it grow. And then of course you have the pataka and the prakari and then the karya. So those who were on the course last week, you know all of this. I can't go over it again just now. But these are the artha prakritis. That means the psychological substratum of the development of a drama. Now Krishna's whole life is a drama. You see? So when our acharyas, after Rasa Lila, come to a chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Nanda Maharaj being eaten by a snake, and then after that there's this intense loving separation of Yugal Geet. So there must be something about this chapter which was a bindu, that served the role of a bindu between the previous chapter and the next chapter. So they're looking for the components of drama within Srimad Bhagavatam. And the story, if you read the story, that's just the Abhida Briti, right? That's just what the words mean. But the Vyanjan Briti must be revealing a bindu, a psychological substratum in the main characters, which is making their desire grow and grow and grow. Understand? So when our acharyas have commented on that chapter, they brought out this whole pastime that this is very beautiful and very astonishing, how Krishna is playing with all the gopis when they're on Tirtha Yatra. Okay, so then the next day, next morning, the subject was Yadrichaya. The meaning of the word Yadrichaya, that the Supreme Lord is controlled by his devotee. That we've discussed earlier. Kimchit in the Atma-sattvam verse. Yeah? The Supreme Lord is under the control of his devotees, yes. But now we want to explain that the devotee is not under the control of the Supreme Lord. So we gave many examples in Srimad Bhagavatam, like Angira Rishi coming to Chitraketu Maharaj, the Navayogendras coming to Nimi Maharaj, Narad Muni coming to Vyasadev. Everywhere you find Yadrichya, that pure devotees they're actually independent, wandering here and there, and they distribute Krishna's mercy. And because the pure devotees are distributing Krishna's mercy, then who gets the mercy, who doesn't get the mercy, the fault of impartiality doesn't fall on the Supreme Lord. Because he's the Advaya Jiva-Tattva, and he's non-dual, so he cannot have partiality among the jivas. Like that. So that was connected to maintaining the Advaya Gyan, the non-dual nature of God, while also establishing the glories of pure Vaishnavas. And also establishing that bhakti is only available by sadhu sangha. So that was all there in the class on Yadrichaya. Then, in the evening, then, oh, this was very, very beautiful. Yes, it was Man-Tattva, yes, but that was not the essence. The essence of the class yesterday was, you see, Hera Panchami is going on festival. Lakshmi Devi comes out with all the soldiers to attack her husband, and Mahaprabhu and his associates are all like, oh, this is, and they're laughing, and so I've never seen an anger like this before. Then Mahaprabhu said, can you tell me about different types of loving anger? Now Swarup Damodar Goswami, what he does is, he begins to explain about all different types of gopis, and because these heroines have different moods, when they're angry, the anger is expressed in different ways. Right? So, now this is not written in Shastra. It's not written. All these terms about different kinds of heroines and different types of man, everything, that's in the aesthetics, the science of poetics. Bharat Muni, Vishwanath Kaviraj's Sahitya Darpan, Anandavardhan's Dwanyalok, the Kavya Prakash of Mamatacharya. So all these poets, they've written about all these technical terms of different heroes, heroines, different moods, and so on, like that. It's not in the Shastra, in the spiritual Shastra that deals with God. Some persons have taken some little elements of that, like Geet Govinda of Jayadev Goswami. You'll see some of the Naika Vastas, that means the different stages that the heroine goes through. When the hero's late and she becomes worried, and then she becomes really angry with him and she throws him out, and like this. So some of that you'll see in Geet Govinda, but that's just a small part of the vast subject of kavya, poetry itself. But now Swarup Damodar is using the whole array of poetic and aesthetic knowledge and presenting Krishna's Leela from that perspective. So then one may say, well, no one's done that before. Who can do that? Why should you do that? Where's the evidence in Shastra? Even Vallabhacharya analyzed different kinds of gopis. He said some are sattvic, some are tamasic, some are rajasic, and some are sattvic, rajas, like this. So he got 18 categories of gopis based on different combinations of the gunas. So he's a great acharya, he's very rasic. But even he didn't take the categorizations of heroes and heroines from the kavya and apply that to Krishna Leela. So the question is it legitimate or not? So when Mahaprabhu is speaking with Swarup Damodar Goswami quoted the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Evam shasasanku virajita nisha sasatyakamanu brito balagana shasheva Atmanya viruddha saurata sarvaha sharat kavyakata rasasraya. That those nights where Krishna met with the gopis became the shelter of sarva rasa, of all the rasas described in the Kavyakata. So now, by the words of Shukadev Goswami 5,000 years ago, the door is open for Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami to run in and now explain everything about Krishna Lila, taking the terms from the world of aesthetics.
It's like the universals have their source.
Yeah. So, the essence of the class yesterday was really, is this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Ujjalan, all this poetry of our acharyas, what are they, do they have more partiality to poetry than to metaphysics and to the Vedas? No. The mature fruit of all the Vedas, the Samadhi Bhasha of Shukadev Goswami, the best Praman is opening the door and telling Swarabdhara and Rupa Goswami, go for it. Kavyukatara Sastraya. And so we can see that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjalan, all the writings of Rupa Goswami, they're never something entirely new or independent. But our Sampradaya is completely grounded in the Bhagavatam, which is the mature fruit of all the Vedas. So never lose that, because once you start to separate from the Vedas, from the Praman Tattva, now things can go everywhere. So it may look on the surface that this Gaudiya Vaishnavism is a very unique, and it is unique, but it may seem like a new invention, but it's not. All the premises for every single thing that we do is there in the Vedas. It's just the expansion. It's the Dwani of the Bhagavatam. Gaudiya Vaishnavism is the Dwani of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Anudwani and the Anudwani. That means the reverberations of the implications of the Bhagavatam. Okay. So that was last night's experience, and then of course this morning, because we discussed what is the Paramatma, and from that we understand today Jiva-Tattva, and we went into the details of Jiva-Tattva. So that was our journey this week. Hare Krishna. There will be another class this evening.
So no question?
Yep, we'll do. Is the eclipse still going on?
1 minute. It's 1:20 now.
It's 1:20. So, eclipse is a terrible time. So if in Krishna consciousness you have such a good time during the eclipse, then what a good time you're going to have after the eclipse. Kimuta. Who can say? So now you can take some questions from the devotees. Yes, Radhika.
Лолита, переведи, пожалуйста, на свет поскольку сначала, изучая христианскую религию, мы понимали, что демон и сатан для них это одно и то же, то есть получается просто зло или антикрист.
Demon and Satan is something like an antithesis to Jesus Christ. We know this by studying the Christian philosophy.
Потом, изучая греческую философию, мы поняли, что Платон, например, и все сократичи, они каталогировали, то есть демон это для них был эрос, это наша энергия психолибидика.
By studying Plato and other also Greek philosophers, we understood that demon is our own calm.
И то есть не такое страшное. А Сатан это был Сет, египетский Сет, то есть 7 капитальных грехов.
It was said in Egypt like 7 sins, 7 types of sins.
Значит, для них сертификати капитали, саребер оргулио, инвидия. Основные вот эти 7 грехов, то есть это 7 альтер-эго, регруппированы. Ира, гордость, ичидия,
anger,
зависть и прочее. Окей. Значит, для Платоничи эго, значит, для Платоничи зло как таковое это было эго, и значит нужно было работать над эго.
So then you have to work on your ego.
Вот. А сейчас вот мы не можем понять, куда каталогировать демонов, про которые говорит ведическая культура.
And now we cannot understand where to put the demons about which the Vedic culture is.
Yeah, where do the Christian conception of demons fit into the Vedic conception of demons or something? Okay, so These are different ways of looking at the world. You can look at the world in terms of the actual varieties which are manifest here, or you can look at the world in terms of the metaphysical forces which bring about the forms that you're seeing. So, for example, if someone will say, let's say a Christian will say, oh, Satan is influencing me, I have to become free from Satan. What is that phrase? Begone Satan. Right? Saint Benedict wrote the prayer. Begone Satan. It's very famous. Huh? Vade retro. Vade retro. Vade retro. Begone Satan. Okay. So there's an idea that Satan is an actual person, and he comes and influences us. Then she put forth the idea that a Greek philosopher would say, well, actually it's the demands of your body, it's the lust or the anger, greed, all these bad qualities in your body, that's the real evil that you have to do battle with. Yeah? So you'll find both conceptions are there in the Vedas. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says, Oh Krishna, by what am I forced to act, even against my own will? And Krishna said, Kama esha, krodha esha rajaguna samudbhava. It's just lust. And what's the cause of this lust? Rajagun. So that's a metaphysical explanation that the energy, the mode of passion, influences you, and when that mode of passion is in your body and mind, then you subjectively experience the thing that you call lust. Right? So there's subjective experience, then there's the objective cause of that subjective experience. So that's like a metaphysical or philosophical explanation. So in Vedic culture we have that, and that's similar to what you presented in the Greeks. But the Christian conception that there's some evil person like a fallen angel or something, like Satan, Lucifer, and he can influence you, that's also there in the Vedic culture. So we don't believe that you can fall from the spiritual world. That's not possible. All the souls have been here anadi, without any beginning, the ones who are here. Well, if you're there, you can't come here. Once you're out of Maya, you will not come back in Maya. So, but in the Vedic culture, it said that when Lord Brahma created the secondary creation of the world, that means he took the elements that were created by Krishna and combined them to make the forms that we see around us. So, the world goes through 4 yugas, and Brahmaji created the Yuga Purushas. That means the 4 predominating personalities of those 4 yugas. So one of them is named Kali Maharaj. So Kali Maharaj is an actual personality. And if a person comes in contact with a dharma, then he enters into them and begins to take over their life. So we could say, if there's something which is analogous in Christianity and the Vedas, then Satan is kind of analogous to Kali Maharaj, the personality of the age of Kali. So in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there you find this very beautiful, very surreal history, how Parikshit Maharaj actually met face to face with the personality of Kali. And he punished him, and he told him, you can only go to those persons who eat meat, who take intoxication, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, those who have sexual incontinence, promiscuity, and those who gambling. So if someone says that someone's influenced by Satan or possessed by Satan, it's kind of true that when people become involved in these activities, then the influence of Kali comes. So, is that clear? Radhika, is that okay? So you can read first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam about the Kali Maharaj. I just want to add one more point which just came into my mind in connection with this. And that is that in Vedic drama, sometimes you can't show everything that happens. You can't show. If you make a movie, then the camera can, film inside a wardrobe to see something hiding there, or film this and this. But in a drama, you can't show everything on the stage. And sometimes persons have thoughts and motivations that the audience may not be able to see. So in Vedic drama, to reveal things, either internal things or outer things that can't be represented on the stage, then you have some, like a chorus of narrators. And that chorus of narrators, it may be one person or more persons, are often personified emotions. And that's what Devakar did last night. When Hiranyakashipu was angry over Varahadev killing his brother, then actually his fury was personified and actually was played by Radhika. So there's the connection. But so we see this in Vaishnav dramas as well. When Mahaprabhu and his associates performed the Dan Kelly Lila of Radha and Krishna in Chandrasekhar Bhavan, at some point the narrators were love personified and friendship personified. And they were talking with each other, introducing points, and also responding to things that were happening. So, why did that happen as well? So we have not only the actors, but you have these transcendent personified beings who are also part of the drama to give insights to the audience that would ordinarily not be accessible. So, and also in, let's say, in Chaitanya Chandadoy Natakam of Krishnadas Kaviraj, Kavi Karnapur, you have Gora Leelas going on, and Kali Maharaj is one of the chorus, the narrative chorus. Kali Maharaj and Adharma and lust and greed, that means Kali Maharaj and his associates. So they're all personified and considered to be intervening in the lives of the characters as well, like that. So I'm just bringing that up because it's connected to your question, and it's also connected to our Kavya Katha Rasasraya. How Krishna Lila should be presented according to the conventions of drama. So, does anyone else? Another question? Yes, Prabhu.
Вы сегодня упомянули, что каждая клетка индивидуальна.
Today you told that all of the cells, they're individuals.
Как это правильно понять?
How to understand this in a correct way?
That the souls are individual.
Cells.
Oh, cells.
Клетка, я так понял, что клетка тела индивидуальна.
You told that the cells of body, something like, is it also?
And they didn't say that.
So
was that your translation? No, that was Lalita's translation. She'll explain.
Because soul cells. No, you see,
all souls are pervaded.
It's all coming to you because I cannot do correct translation.
Any other
when
question?
it's too fast.
Yes, Ananga Mohini.
Maharaj, yesterday you said that Gadadhar Pandit was reading his commentary on...
I was hearing from Vallabhacharya, yeah.
Oh, he was hearing from Vallabhacharya. So what's the deep meaning behind it? What is the lesson? Obviously,
yes,
but what is the deeper meaning?
This is a really wonderful question. Because it connected with what we were just discussing a few moments ago. So some jewels are appearing that's from nowhere. You see, we discussed in last night's class how Shukadev Goswami opened the door to explain Krishna Lila in terms of the components of kavya, poetry, the poetic tradition, Kavya Katha Rasasraya. Now, and we also just mentioned that Vallabhacharya had written an explanation of the Rasa Lila, but how did he categorize all the gopis? In terms of the gunas. Right? So now he's trying to read this Katha to Gadara Pandit, who is Radharani. And actually, from the Gaudiya from that higher perspective, from the point of Mahaprabhu also is combined for Radha and Krishna. He doesn't want to teach the world to categorize the gopis in terms of. He wants to teach the world Kavya Katara Sasraya, that the real way of understanding the psychology of the gopis in the deepest way, not to minimize Vallabhachari, but this is a far superior way. So even though that was written, Savatsra Kavya Katara Sasraya, and Vallabhachari was a great scholar of the Bhagavatam, but without the mercy of Mahaprabhu, he didn't see that. So he categorized them in another way, which we can say is 18 types. It doesn't really bring out the nuances of the gopis' emotions in the way Rupa Goswami's 360 types. Yeah, and then Kavi Karnapur in the land Kostuba, it goes up to about like 2,900 types. I can talk about that next year. We can discuss that, the 2,900 types of gopis. We can discuss that for the next 100 years. So, but basically, Kavi Karnapur is also doing the same thing. It's just another analysis, but it's also based on Kavi Katha and not on the gunas, like that. So just see, Mahaprabhu basically said, I don't want to hear this commentary. He didn't want to hear it. Because what Mahaprabhu wanted to give was so much. What Mahaprabhu wanted to give was so much superior. But at that point, it may not have been obvious to everyone, because at that point Rupa Goswami had not yet been empowered to manifest it. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutan. It was Rupa Goswami who manifested the innermost heart's desire of Mahaprabhu. So, Mahaprabhu didn't want to hear, and because he didn't want to hear, no one wanted to hear, because everyone wants to be in his Anugatya. So then Vallabhachari cornered Gadadhar Pandit and said, oh, listen to my commentary. And Gadadhar Pandit is very humble, very gentle, so he wasn't rude, he didn't want to run away. Now, he listened, and he became a little bit fearful. He thought to himself, Mahaprabhu knows my heart. So he'll respond to me after the appraisal, a fair appraisal of my virtues and my faults. So I'm not worried about Mahaprabhu. But the followers of Mahaprabhu are very strict. So my Gurudev used to quote this verse, this thought of Gadadhar Pandit, and say, we should try to have very good behavior. Because even though Mahaprabhu knows our heart, but his associates are very strict. And they'll say something or do something. Gurudev used to say this. So it's right there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, but what happened, of course, Mahaprabhu rejected him. But Gadadhar Pandit wasn't afraid, because he knew that Mahaprabhu knew his heart. And Mahaprabhu was trying to provoke him. But he could not be provoked. And so that's why I mentioned last night, after the drama of Lord Vamandev, that the essence of the drama of Lord Vamandev, this essence is also there in this pastime of Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya. That the Lord provokes us. And if we are Trinada Pisunichena, then it's not just that we've tolerated, but that provocation was His mercy, because He was giving us the opportunity to purchase His heart by our humility. Because it's one thing if someone gives you a problem and you tolerate it. But if the person you're trying to serve, you're dedicated, because you're not dedicated to them. So if they give you a problem, you just don't care. But the person you're trying to love and they're trying to serve, and they reciprocate with you by giving you a problem. Now this is really a test. Is your love unconditional or not? Is it really Aslishyava Padaratam Pinashtu, like the last verse of Shikshastika? Krishna, you're the Lord of whatever you do. Even you mistreat me, you abuse me, still, my love will never change. So Purnamasi said this when she was describing love. She said, Gunam dosham shaitam. Gunam gurutam. Prema swabhavika, prema swabhav, the vikridati. What is the verse now? It's there's a very beautiful verse spoken by Purnamasi Devi. Stotram eva tatastatam prakatayam chittasya date byatam. Nindapi pramadam priyachati parihasasriyam bibrati. No gunam, no dosham shaitam gunenu gurutam kenapyana tanvati. Premna swarasikasya kasyatidayam vikridati prakriya. Once Madhu Mango asked Purnamasi Devi, what is the nature of this swabhavik prem, natural love? Purnamasi Devi said, Stotrameva tatastatam prakatayam chittasya date byatam. He said, if Krishna will praise Radharani, then outwardly she remains neutral. Usually, when there's not actual love, and the lover says, oh, you are so beautiful, and then the person hears it, that means they have no love. Love is not like that. When there's actual love, and the lover praises his heroine, then she's just neutral. But in her heart she feels pain. Because her thirst to love, her thirst to serve is so intense that whatever she does, she always feels that it's not enough. So she's already feeling that the way she served and the way she loves is not good enough. So if the lover will praise her on top of that, that's just like putting salt in a wound. But she doesn't want to show a jalamukhi, a fiery face to her beloved, so outwardly she remains tatasta, neutral, and inwardly she feels pain. So stotrameva tatastatam prakatayam chittasya date byatam. Then nindapi pramadam priyeva pariha sasriyam bibyati. And so that describes if the lover praises her, but what if he criticizes her? So now what happens in this world where love is not real? When your beloved criticizes you, then you become upset, right? And you try to defend yourself. So when there's pure love, and the lover criticizes the heroine, then the heroine thinks he's joking and feels great joy. Purnamasi Devi is telling it like it is. What is the real love like? There's no real love in this world. Akaitava Krishna Prem Jeno Jambu Nadihem Nilokin Nahai. Yeah, Mahaprabhu himself said, this pure love, which is free from any duplicity or cheating, is like the gold of the Jambu Nadi. Simply, if someone tries to sell you some gold from the Jambu Nadi, don't buy it because it's fake. This love is not available anywhere in this world. So Purnamasi is describing Radharani's love, what it's really like. So she said, Na dosha kshaitam. And when the heroine sees some faults in her beloved, she sees faults in Krishna, but her love doesn't go down. And neither when she sees good qualities, do his good qualities make her love go up. You see, her love doesn't go up and down depending on how he behaves or what qualities he has. Why? Because Prema swara sikasya kasyatidayam vikridati prakriya. This love has a life of its own. It's spontaneous. It has its own lila which is independent of the behavior of the beloved. That's Prem. So, now we're coming back to Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. Or Bamandev and Bali Maharaj. The less Rasic examples are more easy to understand and as it goes up. But it's the same principle which is the same thread of the idea flowing throughout each example. That when one is provoked, when one is criticized, when one is put in a difficult situation by the beloved, but the lover tolerates and continues to serve, that their love doesn't go up and doesn't go down. Because the love has a life of its own. It's ahoituki. It's causeless. It's another entity actually. Krishna Rachaya Prema Bhaktara Nachaya Apanichai Tina Nachaya Katai. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami said, Bhakti makes the devotee dance, Bhakti makes Krishna dance, and Prem itself is another entity with its own dance. And the three of them dance together. This is going to be the subject of tonight's class actually.
Wow.
So we're coming onto the independent nature of love. So we're just starting to touch it now. So that's what's being illustrated here, and that's the inner essence of this loving relationship between Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit. And afterwards, Vallabhacharya felt ashamed of what had happened. And he went to Gadadhar Pandit and begged initiation from him and received Diksha from Gadadhar Pandit. So Vallabhacharya, in Gauragana Desha Dipika, wonderful thing. It said that Vallabhacharya is the incarnation of Shukadev Goswami. He's the very person who said, Kavya Kata Rasasraya. He's the very person who said it. But then he has this leela of writing a commentary that the Gaudiyas don't want to hear. And then he gets Diksha from Radharani herself. So that's another proof that Shukadev Goswami is Radharani's parrot. Right? As well. It's not direct, but it's good enough. That Shukadev Goswami is Radharani's parrot. So when he appears in Gaura Leela as Vallabhacharya, then he takes Diksha from Radharani herself, Gadadhar Pandit. So these are some of the inner meanings. Some of the inner meanings. Some. Because this Gaura Leela you can never come to the end of it. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says, Chaitanya Leela Amritapur, Krishna Leela Sukarpur, Dui Mili Hoi Sumadurya, Dui Mili Hoi Sumadur, Sadhu Guru Prasade, Taha se ashwade, Sehi jani madhurya prachurya. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, Chaitanya Leela is Amritapur. It's like a very delicious pudding. Made of Amrita, nectar. And Krishna Leela is Sukarpur. Like camphor. Dui Mili Hoi Sumadur. And when this Krishna Leela and Gaura Leela are mixed together, mucho gusto. Mucho gusto, right? That's the Italian translation of Hoi Sumadur. Then when they mix, it's so intensely sweet. Excuse, it's not my nature to, but I have no microphone, so I have to shout a little bit. So, so then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Sadhu Guru Prasade Taha Ye Ashwade. But this is coming to Guru Tattva now. Sadhu Guru, what is Guru Tattva? Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur used to quote this verse to explain Guru Tattva. He said, ultimately, Shri Guru is that person who makes you taste the excessive sweetness of the mixture of Krishna Leela and Gaura Leela. That's the responsibility of Guru. Sadhu Guru Prasade Taraye Aswade. And the person who, by the mercy of his Guru, by the mercy of sadhus, tastes the mixture of the Amritapur of Chaitanya Leela and the Suku Kapur of Krishna Leela, then that person, say Jani Madhurya Prachur, then they experience not only Madhur, sweetness, not only Sumadur, But madhurya prachurya. Prachur means excessive. It's just too much. Too much sweetness. Excessive sweetness. That they can never come to the end of it. So, when we discuss Gadadhar Pandit, Vallabhacharya, Mahaprabhu, Swami Damodar Goswami, Shukadev Goswami, Radha and Krishna, everything. This is the mixture of the nectar of Gaur Leela and the nectar of Krishna Leela, and then one can experience the Madhurya Prachur, the greatest sweetness of all.
You said that.
And there's no end. There's no end to that. Don't think that you ever come to the end of reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. In my life, I have had the good fortune to know several highest level of Mahabhagavad Vaishnavas. And they all said, even though they perhaps didn't talk to each other or write to each other or anything, but just before they were leaving this world, they all gave me the same instruction. Read Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like their final instruction. Read Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's nothing like Chaitanya Charitamrita, because there is the Dui Mili Hoi Sumadur, and you'll never come to the end of it. I'm sure you have all read the chapter of Herapanchami. Yeah? Did you see Sarvasar Kavya Katara Sasra? Did you see it? No, you didn't. So it's like that. Every time you'll see another completely mind-blowing nectar exploding from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's quite amazing. Yes, another question?
You said that Prem, even if you see qualities in your beloved, it stays more or less the same, doesn't increase, and if you see
it doesn't increase or decrease, having that quality as the cause.
Yeah.
It may increase, but that's of its own independent nature.